Hello. So what today we're going to go through today is we're just going to focus on how do you actually master investor calls? What does that look like? And why does it matter? Right? Where I see a lot of founders go wrong is once you actually get into investor calls, you just don't know what to do. And you don't know how to set yourself up in the right way to give yourself the highest chance of success of getting through these meetings and getting to those second meetings onwards. After that, it's also about how you can set yourself up generally for every single investor call to give yourself the highest chance of success. Because that first call and then also onwards, it's not about getting an investment. That first call is really just about getting to the next meeting. And that's really what fundraising is, right? It's just getting to the next meeting or the next stage. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through today is we're just going to be focusing on how do you actually do that? How do you master investor calls? And I'll give you some tips and everything like that just to go through of how we're doing that in the right way. Okay, so what we're going to do then is just going to show you, where's my iPad? There we go. Yeah, so look, we're going to just go through the 6 or 7 things that I think about when it comes to mastering investor calls and how you can set yourself up in the right way. And then we can go from there and we can focus on how you're doing everything. Obviously, other episodes in the Fundraising Unlocked Podcast / newsletter can also help you here with other things, but this is really about mastering investor calls and how we do it. So look, the first thing I want to do is I just want to go through what I believe is a generic investor call kind of template of timings that you should be setting out and making sure that you're doing to give yourself the highest chance of success. So you can see it here. So this is a kind of generic investor calls. So how this works is you should be parking around 3 to 5 minutes purely on rapport building. Now, you'll see after you see this lesson, you may think that, that's quite a lot, right? You're gonna be like, that's so much time that I'm wasting in a 30-minute call. And I forgot to say here as well, so generic kind of call in an intro call is usually going to be around 30 minutes, right? So how do you kind of break that down and make sure that you're setting yourself up in the right way? So the first one is you really want to make sure that you're spending at least 3 to 5 minutes on rapport building. When I was an investor, a tier 1 fund and seeing, hundreds of people come in, the worst thing that I ever saw with the founders was just not actually building a connection to me. And we'll go into the importance of that in soon, but, it's really hard to, actually have a really good intro call if I don't feel some level of connection to you. And what I saw a lot of founders do wrong here was they were focusing so much on, I have to pitch, I have to make them invest into me, etc., that there was zero connection built, right? And, I've seen founders that I've worked with, in a 30-minute call actually kind of not even do the last 3 or at least like the middle 2 and spend 15, 20 minutes of that call just in rapport building. But that investor loved them, really focused on what they were doing and they were willing to take that second call. So it's really, really important that you don't miss out on rapport building. This is what's really going to move the needle for you and something that you can't just kind of slip by and think that you can kind of do it. Rapport building is so important. So the next kind of 20-25 minutes that you can really push into is the pitch and the Q&A. So I've put here 25 minutes. It's probably going to be closer to 20 minutes, and I've also put a pitch and Q&A separate. But this really does depend on how you feel, what makes you the most confident, also how you feel like investors are in your industry, etc. But it can be broken up in a pitch Q&A. It can also be a conversation. It can be, presenting off the pitch deck, etc. What we'll do in a second is we'll go through practice cycles and the importance of practice cycles. But one of the things you need to be doing in the practice cycles, you need to be understanding is what makes you feel confident, right? Is it doing a 10-minute pitch and then getting investors ask you questions after? Or is it inviting more questions, and just making it more conversational? Or is it not even having the pitch deck and doing it? You need to make sure that you're practicing and focusing on what makes you feel confident and then spending that 20 minutes going through what you feel that makes you give the best, story or the best example of your company and makes investors want to invest. Now, the last one that's really, really important is actually parking 5 minutes at the end purely for process. Right, we want to make sure that we're spending a lot of time and giving ourselves 5 minutes at the end just to talk about process. That's process on your end, that's process on the investor's end, and we'll go through why that's so important and how you end the meeting properly. But this is a really important aspect to make sure that you are setting the scene and what you're doing and building it out. Okay. So now we know what we're trying to do here in the generic kind of investor call. We can now move into how I think about the 7 tips and actionable insights that you can gain from this to really build out and master your investor calls, and in what you're doing. So look, the first one, you need to control the meeting. Now, fundraising is really a power game in many ways, right? And you need to play that power game. You need to realize what it is. And you need to realize that at the beginning, investors have the power, right? They're the ones with the money, sure. And this is the prize that you're going to be thinking about. You're going to be desperate for money. From your end, I understand why you think that. But once you understand, I've sat on every side of the table now, right? A tier 1 fund, I've raised venture money. I've now helped founders raise hundreds of rounds. What you need to realize is that investors, all they're really looking for is the best founders, right? And if you don't control the meeting, if you don't show them that you are the prize, right? That you have the expertise, right? Expertise, so important, right? That you are the ones that they should be investing into. And the really big thing on this one as well, I get to see founders go wrong all the time, is you've got to realize they're seeing hundreds of founders, right? Hundreds of founders a year, and all they're a normal saying that they'll say in the investor world is they're really trying to they pick teams and they're trying to find a needle in a haystack, right? So you are the prize, and you need to show them that you're the best founder they've seen in the last 6 months, right? So best founder in last 6 months. You need to show them that you're that person, right? And the only way in which you can do that at the beginning, and we'll go through more as we go through, is making sure that you're controlling that meeting and showing that you are the prize. And controlling the meeting is the first easiest way to show that, right? That you are the prize and you're doing everything that you're doing in the right way, and that you are the one that's running this meeting and you have the opportunity here, and it's not the investor, right, that's controlling anything. It's you. It's going to be hard for you, right? And one of the things we do is if you do end up working with me, is we focus on actually what makes the mindset of you as a founder, getting into that fundraising mindset, showing that you're the prize, what makes you a great founder, all of these kind of things, what makes that opportunity great, so that when you go into these meetings, you're confident that you are the prize and that the investor should be pitching to you within reason, of course. Now, the second one, which is really, really important of why you want to control a meeting, is you are time constrained, right? Look, we've got 30 minutes and we're not going to, we need to spend 5 minutes on rapport building. We need to spend 5 minutes on process. We've only got a certain amount of time that we can really focus on making sure that investors love us, right? So, when a really common one, for example, is, you want to, what that blue thing's there. You want to, stop fund, this is particularly for VC, but fund convos. What if you've ever been into investor calls, right, you're going to see this where an investor's going to start the meeting, they're going to control the meeting, and they're going to say, let me tell you about my fund, and they go on this spiel about their fund for 5 minutes you've already heard before, or if you haven't, it's not going to give you that much value add on they raise this amount of money, and they invest this many, they pre-seed to seed, etc., etc. It's not helping you, and all it's doing is putting power into their hands, right? So what I would do is, obviously you still want to do the rapport building, and we'll discuss that in a second of like how you actually do that in the right way. But in between here, right, in between these two parts, this is where you control. Okay, so here is really just about rapport building, right? So there's no real control in anything. You're just having conversations, really building that connection. After that's kind of died down, at that point you want to say something along the lines of, hey, look, we've only got about 25 minutes, 30 minutes left, and there's a lot to go through. I know a lot about your fund. I've researched them, or I know you as an investor, or this person told me that you connected to you. I know everything about you. Why don't we leave 5 minutes to the end for process if there's any questions, and we just get straight into it, right? You really want to show that you don't want to waste time on these things around that doesn't matter, or necessarily around their background. and really kind of just go into, okay, why were the opportunity and why this is the exact company that you should be looking at. All right. So number 2, this is again a really common thing that I see founders do wrong, is you're treating the investor call as something about your company. Whereas, back to this of, the best founder in the last 6 months and you're the prize and all these kind of things, you need to make investors like you. This is the most important thing from an intro call, is just making them want to spend more time with you. And there's 2 different ways in which you do this, right? So the first one is value. Like, what does that mean, right? But this is exactly back to that. It's the, so it's the best founder. Right? That kind of, the elevator test. So if that one, which is, I would like to spend more time with this person. Right? And then the last one is expertise. Right? They're an expert in this industry. I want to learn more because they have really great knowledge and they can help me, whether it's your industry, whether it's hiring, whether it's building companies, whatever it is. They're doing this, right? So you're the best founder they've seen in the last 6 months or 12 months. You're an expert in your field and they want to learn more about you, and they actually like you and they want to spend more time with you. And if they could, go, so another one is the beer test, right? Or the elevator test or the holiday test. They'd actually want to spend time with you, because you've got to remember that, fundraising is not this thing where you fundraise and then that's the end goal, right? The fundraising is really the beginning for the investor. Right, that's a potential 7 to 10 year journey that they're going on with you, that they're going to spend every kind of day, not every day, but every week with you, spending time with you, and every month sitting on board meetings with you and building this business and going through the hardships. They need to feel like, I like this person, I want to spend time with them. The second one is, like I said, is rapport building, right? Where I saw a lot of founders go wrong here is, they were so ingrained into their business of being like, I have to make them want to invest into me. They just didn't build a rapport with me, right? They didn't do the things they needed to do to, really feel a connection. So there's a few ways in which you can do this, right? So I'll start with Zoom, right? And then I'll go into in-person, right? So Zoom, what you want to do, there's 3 different ways you can do this, right? First one is connection, right? So if you listen to me at all and you actually want to make sure that you, build a successful funding round, and not in just this one, but for future ones as well. And if you want to, send me a DM and I can send you the kind of CRM building and network building resource as well. The first thing you need to be thinking about is, how do I actually build a connection with them? Sorry, I'll actually say is as connectors is probably a better way of saying it. What you want to try and do here is you want to try and say, okay, look, these are the connectors. This is how they're doing everything. And you want a warm connection, and from that warm connection you can actually start to build rapport, right? So, how do you know James? Yeah, James introduced us. How do you know James? Oh yeah, he's a really good person, right? Yeah, I've known him for 20 years, or I've known him for 10 years. Oh, he helped me build this. Yeah, we scaled this team, or yeah, he's really helped me on these certain things in this business, or whatever it is. So then they make them feel like, wow, okay, he knows this person that I really respect really well, and we're doing everything, right? The second one is research, right? So you've done research on them. Right? So this is a really important one. What you're trying to do here is you're trying to understand something that they've done, whether it's an article they've done or a recent investment that they've done, or the way in which they think about these certain things, or you met them at an event, whatever it is, of, hey, I like you, let's have a conversation, right? And also personal, right? Like sometimes they're going to be, on the website, right? On my old fund, it said that I love Muay Thai and traveling, right? And I can't remember what the other one was. I think it was just those. Oh, an Arsenal Football Club, right? Those are like my 3 things. No founder really ever spoke to me. Well, there were a few that was like, oh, you support Arsenal? That's really cool. Like, I support this team, right? And we had talked about football for 10 minutes, right? Or hey, I've done Muay Thai before. Or I love Thailand. Whatever it is. Really focusing on how you can build that rapport when I'm feeling like, wow, okay, I like this person. I know what I'm doing, right? Number 3 is background, right? In Zoom. Now, I'll use me as an example. I'm in a hotel room at the moment, right? So if you were speaking to me and I was here, you'd say, oh, Gian, where are you? You've got a TV in the background. Like, what's happening, right? And I talk about, yeah, I'm in a hotel room in Singapore at the moment. and then I'd have a conversation with you, and we can build that conversation up and keep doing that over a 5-minute period. Build that connection. Rapport building is so important, right? In person or IRL, right? Very similar, right? It's going to be all of those three if you can. Background maybe not, right? Of course. But here it's just travel or office, right? If you go into their office, or you're in the coffee shop or whatever, you can talk about, oh yeah, I go to Starbucks all the time, or yeah, I was on the train, it was a bit crazy, or oh, I love these offices, they're really nice, or yeah, we work pretty close here actually, where one of our clients was just there and we work there all the time, etc., etc. Super important. Okay. No, so number 3, we're going to be focusing on starting your founder origin story. Okay. So coming back to all of this, right? You're trying to make them like you. You're trying to control the meeting and show that you're the prize. The best way to do this is to start with your founder origin story, right? It's what really builds that connection that you are great, right? So really builds that connection that you are great. And on top of that, it gives you an easy way, right, to really build that founder market fit of expertise, and secondly, that you're the best person. Or the only founder. Right? And look, if you're having doubts on whether or not you're the only founder that's ever going to be able to do this, or that you're going to be the successful one, you shouldn't be building a VC-backed business, right? It's just not for you. So you need to really, this is why we go through mindset stuff a lot and deep kind of, right, why are you fundraising, what makes you a great founder, what are the differences in that regard, really building out, why you're doing your business, what, how you think about that from a founder market fit, all of these kind of things, because this is really important. Right, you need to make them feel like you're the only founder that out of all the people that they've spoken to, because they've probably spoken to your competitors before, within reason, you're the only one with your expertise that can actually do this, and your unique insights are the reason why you're going to do it. And what you can do here is, and this is where, again, I see a lot of founders go wrong here, is even if a company, an investor says, hey, let me talk to you about, let me hear about your business. Let me hear about your business. I don't want you to go straight into your business. It's just not the right way of doing it. The first thing you say is, okay, yeah, let me tell you about business, but let me tell you how first we started here. Let me give you a bit of background, right? And again, what it's going to do as well, when you're thinking about it from a point of view of they're seeing hundreds of businesses, right? They're jumping in 10 maybe, intro calls a week, 30-minute intro calls a week. So you're sitting in 2, 3, 4, 5 hours worth of calls a week minimum. Everyone else is just going straight into their business, right? And what happens there is it just kind of gets into this kind of murky kind of information overload of everyone just talking about the business, and there's no real way to memorize, right? And what you can do is you can actually make them feel like they're going to remember you, right? So what they're going to do is they're going to remember you, and that's so important, right? This remembering you is what's going to make them want to invest. So it's so important that you're doing that in the right way. So what's number 4? Practice, practice, practice. So important for you to practice. Where I see founders go wrong with the mastering vesicles is you're just taking them as you go, right? And I can't count how many times I've spoken to founders that I end up working with who say, I'm really confident about my narrative and the way I pitch. I know that I'm great. I don't have a worry. And I speak to them and say, okay, how many investor calls have you had, and how many of them resulted into second meetings, right? And it's always, anywhere from that kind of 20 to 30% range, sometimes even less. But they're stone hard, like, I'm amazing at this, and you shouldn't worry about this, and I'm really, really great at it. And what the first thing we do is, we jump on practice calls, we get them recorded, and we really start to really focus on what they're doing. And as soon as you do that first practice call, as soon as you get that recorded and you look back, you're going to realize how bad you actually are. Everyone's going to do that, right? Even if you're the most seasoned investor, you need to make sure that you're practicing as much as possible. And I think of this in 3 different steps. The first one, and what we'll be doing is we'll be building out your narrative. Super important, of course, the theoretical side, building out what that looks like. There's a lot of nuance in there. There's about 12 exercises that we do in that regard, and really building out how you can build out the three main stories, the main, the banker stories as well, really building out your unique insights, what your vision story looks like, how you can build a clear and concise narrative from a theoretical point of view. That's really great. That's information gathering. That's getting to a point of where we're building something that makes you influential. How do you then make that into something that actually in a meeting is the best? The next step after that is really about building Q&A. So, and I'm not talking about FAQs here. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about specifically in investor calls. How do you build out a resource and be systemized in your questions of knowing these are the top 10 questions I'm being asked. This is how I'm going to answer it, working through those and making them better, giving stories and datas and examples and analogies for what you're doing. And then the third one, which is where I see no founders do it, but is actually going to be the biggest thing that's going to move the needle for you on all of this stuff, is building in practice cycles, right? So getting them recorded, going through my step process, working and iterating it to a point of where you're actually going to be able to, with the practice cycles, if you do this correctly, right? If you do this correctly, your Q&As will improve, right? Your narrative will improve. You'll actually start to work and change on all of these kind of things by doing these practice cycles and building it out, right? So practice is so important to what you're doing. So number 5, make it easy to pitch internally. So this is specifically for VCs, right? This isn't just for angels, because angels are just going to obviously invest themselves. So this one's specifically for VCs. Everything else is just every single investor call you ever have. So for this one, you've got to remember that VCs are, in the 9 to 5, right? They have a 9 to 5 job, right? I had a 9 to 5 job. I had a bonus that I had to look into. I had to do, the politics of the fund and going through that. I had my KPIs of the year, etc., etc. And I was also asking people in the second meeting to take their time away, right? So, they had, like bonus, promotions, and bonuses, right? And taking colleague time, right? So if you don't understand, maybe you don't understand, some people will, usually what in a VC, it'll be like a weekly or a bi-weekly, process management meeting. They have different calls of it, so we call it like the deal leads meeting, for example. And what we do is we jump in and sit down for an hour with the team and we discuss what companies we saw that week. And of those, we'd have to try and find 1 or 2, maybe more if we're obviously having a really good time, of companies that we think the team should meet in that second meeting, right? And when we're doing that and we're saying, hey, you should meet this team, we're making that colleague spend an hour of their week with this random company that they've never met. And for us, when it comes to promotions, when it comes to bonuses, when it comes to all of these kind of things that are going to move us forward, we need to make our colleagues think that we're great, right? And if we're not easily pitching internally, right? And every VC, when they start, they're not the best at pitching internally, right? And always it will be a big thing of where you need to improve. If we're not doing that in the right way, we're going to reduce our chances of getting promotions, right? Reduce our chances of bonuses, reduce our chances of actually the companies that we think are really great getting meetings, right? I'll use an example of one. My colleague, I'm not going to name his name, he came to us, right, in a meeting, and he said, in one of these meetings, right, and he said, yeah, we should meet this company, right? They're doing this certain thing, and it's really great, and, we should meet them, right? Now, when he pitched it to us internally, we were all like, I don't think that doesn't sound very good, right? It's not the best, to be frank. I'm not really too sure if it's something that I really like. And what happened then was, we decided to say no, right? We said, look, we're not going to take that meeting. And you could see he was a bit distraught, looking back now in hindsight. But at the time we were like, look, you just didn't really say it very well. And we just like, this isn't a very good company. Now, 6 months go down the line, right? So I think it was end of 2019, I believe. And this company raised a £9 million seed round, massive round, right? Crazy round. And, we in the health team, we were all like, how have we not seen this company? Like, what's happened? How have we not seen this company? It's ridiculous. And, as the press release came out and we were learning more about it, we were like, this is really ridiculous that we didn't even, take a proper meeting with him. And it was, my colleague, he got not distraught, but he was like, we did have this conversation. I brought this company in. I've met this founder, and you were the ones that said no. And the problem was, partly was because he just didn't internally pitch it to us very well, right? He didn't discuss it in the right way. He didn't really push out, make us feel like this was a company that we should have. And it was a completely different company to the one he did, right? And he pitched to us. Now, I did the same thing when I was a VC. I did that many times, right? Where I saw a company that I really liked and I didn't pitch it right. So you could be doing everything right? You could be doing everything right, but the investor doesn't really feel like they can pitch you internally, or even if they really like you, they just they pitch you internally bad, and their colleagues say no to them. So even if they were going to be a champion, and even though if those people met you they would like you, you failed at the first hurdle. And what we do here, right, in terms of how you do that in the right way, right, what you meant to be doing here is you want to make sure that this is where ending the meetings properly is very important, right? But you want to ask questions, right? And we have a whole section, if you work with me on the questions to ask investors. But on this one, what you want to make sure you're doing is you want to make sure that they're actually saying, hey, you're saying, hey, 30 minutes wasn't enough. What other questions do you have of me, or what are you confused about, or how would you pitch me internally to your colleagues? How really just to make sure that you're focusing on, and they know, great, okay, I know exactly how to speak about this business. If my colleagues come back to me and start grilling me with information, I know the exact information that I'm going to give that's going to make them excited, right? Whether it's about how great you are as a founder, whether it's your opportunity, whether it's about the business model, whether it's about the traction, whatever it is. If I speak to my colleagues and they say anything to me, I'm done. I'm going to make them want to speak to this company. Super important, right? So the second one is you aren't there, right? As much, it's similar to when people talk about the pitch deck. You were not there in those meetings to describe exactly what you're doing, right? Again, so that's why questions are so important. But you want to make sure that the investor can pitch you, right? So whether questions they have, their colleagues have questions around you or the opportunity or whatever it is, they have every information they need. They're super clear on what you're doing and they can really talk about you. That's really important. Now, going back to this one, right? When we go back here and we're talking about kind of process and ending the meeting in the right way, super important. Like, why is that important, right? Why are we doing that? And what does that matter? So there's 4 different things I think about why we're ending the meeting properly. The first one is finishing on a good note, right? We want to make sure that you're finishing positively, and you can't really do that if you're kind of half-arsing and investors like grilling you on something, right? So you want to finish on a good note, and you want to finish on really setting the scene, and that's what moves into this one, right? So then that's what's going to move into this one. You want to set the scene of where your process is, right? So when I'm talking to founders and we're going through these things, really about focusing on, and when we're thinking about process and we're making that momentum building coming through, what we were trying to do, and building out that, for example, the launch timeline and how you prepare in the right way and all these kind of things, and setting up those 50 meetings in 2 weeks. What we're trying to do is we're trying to set the scene for investors to feel like you're that opportunity, right? And what you can do by ending the meeting is you can finish on that good note by setting the scene, right? Hey, we've had so many meetings in the last 2 weeks, or we've got 30 funds in the data room, or 20 funds in the data room. All of these kind of things that are making them feel, and those signals of, wow, okay, this is a great founder, this is a great opportunity, everyone else is in this and I should be too, right? And what that does, if you set the scene in the right way, is it actually starts to build momentum instantly, right? They know the time that they have. We go through how you communicate that in the right way, deeply, if you do want to work with me on that regard, but really about how we can set, that beginning part of setting the scene is that first beginning aspect of FOMO momentum building that you can build. And the only way in which you can do that is by actually ending the meeting properly, finishing on a good note, and giving yourself a chance to talk about your process, right? And the last one, which is really, really important, is you can actually get information, right? And information gathering is such an important aspect to how you can set yourself up in the future, right? When it comes to communication, when it comes to understanding all of the kind of questions you can ask, right? So what you want to be doing here when it comes to information gathering, right, is the first one, you want to understand their process, right? Right, so what day is their deal or round management meeting? Right, what day are they making a decision on you? Only then can you communicate in the right way, right? You want to do, questions. Right, so like what questions that they have, all those kind of things, right? And the last one, which is actually connected to number 7, is you want to make sure that you know exactly what to do when it comes to following up, right? Because at this point you can actually understand what are the major questions they have, right? So a great question that you can ask them is exactly that. It's like, okay, we've only had 30 minutes. What's the kind of big thing that you're really trying to wrap your head around or get conviction on? Or what's the thing you're still a bit confused about? All of these kind of things that you can gain information on whether you follow up or answer at the end. Because a really common one that happens is, and this is definitely going to happen to you as well. You'll be talking and then you'll say something, and if you don't do this process, an investor's going to come off and they're going to be like, this is the way I think about your business. And they're just wrong, right? And maybe that's because you've not, practiced enough, right? You've not really built a connection in what you're doing. You haven't really focused on the Q&A and really done everything in the right way. Maybe that, right? Maybe it's just, they just don't understand it, right? If you don't actually end the meeting properly, you do process, you do the right questions in how you're doing it. You can't ask that question of, tell me a little bit more that you're confused about, right? Maybe they completely get your GTM wrong, right? Or they completely get your business model wrong, or they completely get why your unique insight matters. If you didn't ask these questions and you didn't end the meeting properly, you didn't information gather, you can never really understand that, and you can't ever change the way they're thinking, right? And this happens all the time with all the founders that I worked with, and we've gone on practice calls and we've done it. At the end they'll ask these questions, and then the investor will say, what, I think this, and the investor's like, and the founder's like, no, that's actually, that's completely wrong. Actually, this is actually how we think about it, and this is actually how the business model is going to go, or this is how we think about CAC or whatever it is. And you can see the investor's head light up. Be like, oh, I didn't get that. Oh, that makes so much more sense. That makes me so much more excited. And then again, this is another thing that, you'll end on a good note, right? You'll end on that aspect of, wow, okay, this is actually going to be successful. And that's super important. And then the last one we'll go into is just follow up fast, right? So again, a really common thing that I saw founders do when I was an investor is, I'd have a really good meeting. Right, I have a really good meeting with them. I built connection. I thought they answered their questions really well. There was that kind of feeling of the momentum building, right? And then 3, 4, 5, maybe even a whole week would go by where I'd hit crickets from them, right? I get nothing from them. And I was busy, right? I had many different things I was doing. I had, all of the other things that I had to do as an investor, buying a Patagonia vest, right? Or talking on Twitter about how amazing I am and stroking my ego. I'm only joking on there, but so important. And the big problem with that, was that all I saw was that you were just not executing, right? And another problem with that is because I was so busy, I kind of forgot about you, right? And when it came to, for example, the process management meeting, right, every week, I was trying to wrap my head around do I like this founder? Did I actually like them, right? And another thing is maybe I had questions, right? And you didn't really come back, right? So what you want to do is you want to have a 24-hour lead time, right? And this is where practice is so important and building in practice cycles, right? And we go through how you do that with investor Q&As and all these kind of things. You need to have a 24-hour lead time where you give them all the information that they asked. So when you information gather, you can know exactly the times and what they're doing, and you can have a 24-hour lead time, preferably less, of here is exactly what you asked for, right? Super important. Speed, right, and execution. Right? Now, a second thing. What you need to realize when it comes to investor calls, the way in which you communicate is the nuance, right? The way in which you communicate is the thing that's actually going to change your fundraise more than anything else, right? Because it's that feeling of that perception that investor have of you that really makes them want to invest into you. So the way in which you communicate is a big thing. It's the discussions that investors are going to have internally with their colleagues. It's the way they're going to be wrapping their head around of, does this founder, do you communicate with me very well? And can I spend time with you? Right? Because again, coming back to that thing I said earlier, this is a 7 to 10 year journey that they're starting with you. And if they feel like you're not going to communicate in the right way with them, you don't reply in 24 hours. When you do, it's confusing and they don't really understand it, etc., etc. When they put potentially millions of dollars into you, are they going to feel confident about you communicating to them? Are they going to feel confident about where your business is going? Are they going to be able to help you on all of these kind of things? So communication is such an important aspect for that feeling of trust, right? So that feeling of trust and perception, right? And the last one, which comes back into comms, comms kind of plays into this as well, right? And this is especially for your lead investors, but really anyone, right, doing this. For your lead investor or any investor that's going to be putting a lot of money into you, which we know, if you do that correctly and you get that lead investor, that will waterfall into all the other ones, right? So it's the most important one. They're most likely going to sit on your board, right? So, me, when I was at Octopus, we're a tier 1 fund, investing C to Series A, putting in large checks at these stages as well, some of the largest in Europe. Every single company we invest into, we expected to sit on the board. And because of that, every conversation that we had internally with ourselves and with our colleagues was, what would this founder be like on the board, right? When it comes to, for example, board packs with decks. This is why, for example, when we're talking about practice cycles, right, and doing this, right, here we need to be thinking about decks, right, and extra information, right? We need to be thinking about what are the major questions that are being asked, what's the common ones, right? Through practice cycles, right, we can understand the 3 to 5 major questions. God, I can't write today. Sorry. Right, and from that, from those 3 to 5 major questions, right, we can start to build extra decks, right? And if we do these practice cycles in the right way, right, early on, and prepare in the right way and give ourselves the right timing, right, we can find out, okay, these are the 3 to 5 major practice questions, right? We know these questions are going to be asked to us. These are the most common ones. These keep coming up. And now I need to build board decks. As if I was on a board meeting, as if I'm sending them in a follow-up in less than 24 hours. Here's exactly what you asked for. Here's exactly the information that you wanted. And then what this will make them feel, especially for your lead investors, is, wow, okay, these are going to be good boards, right? These are going to be productive board meetings. In the future, right? And they're gonna feel like, they're gonna, feel confident in you, right? And it always comes back to that, you. If you want to take anything from this, it's always about you as a founder and the way in which you think about that to really build it out. Okay, so super important that you get that right. But yeah, look, that's everything in terms of when it comes to mastering vesicles and how I think about it. If you want to delve deeper into this, happy to chat to you about what that looks like, and we can go into that. And really kind of setting the scene of and building in the system in place of how you set up all of these different areas to really give yourself the highest chance of success. But yeah, hopefully that was helpful, and let me know what else you want to look at. Thanks.